Junior doctors vote overwhelmingly for the first all-out strike in NHS history. 3 days of unprecedented action are planned in England in a row over a new contract.
Incredibly disappointed that Department of Health leadership have put us in this situation in the first place.
Tonight, the Health Secretary called the action very, very disappointing.
Also on the programme, he is dead. France confirms the ringleader of the Paris attacks has been killed as dramatic new pictures emerge of one of the restaurant shootings.
31 years on from the murder of WPC Yvonne Fletcher, a turning point in the investigation.
And don't use the heater unless you have to. The new warning to families with the car that catches fire.
This is ITV News at 6:30 with Mary Nightingale and Mark Austin.
Good evening. The NHS is set to be hit by a wave of unprecedented industrial action that could see thousands of junior doctors go on all-out strike. 3 separate walkouts will cause huge disruption, with hospital appointments and operations cancelled.
Yes, an overwhelming 98% of junior doctors in England have backed full strike action in their row over new contracts. Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt described the move as very, very disappointing. Our Deputy Political Editor, Chris Shipp, reports.
Something drove 20,000 junior doctors to do this last month, and that same something has led them today to declare strike action unprecedented in scale on the NHS in England. We've been filming some junior doctors in recent weeks who've been recording video diaries for us, and after the strike announcement, they did so again today.
During the days of the strike, obviously, there will be disruption, and I understand the concerns of the public about this.
Incredibly disappointed that Department of Health leadership have put us in this situation in the first place.
Junior doctors like Jenna and Aoife are currently paid a premium for unsocial hours outside what's called plain time, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday to Friday. The government effectively wants more hours classified as plain time, so up to 10 p.m. on weekdays and additionally Saturday daytime, so doctors would no longer get extra pay for those hours. In return, they've been offered an 11% increase in pay for plain time. The Health Secretary claims 3/4 of junior doctors will get more money.
You're dramatically scaling back the amount of overtime they get for working very unsociable hours, so you are actually taking money away from many of these junior doctors.
Well, we do need to change the weekend rates, which force hospitals to roster 3 times less medical cover at weekends than they currently do. But what we're saying is to make up for those lower weekend rates, we'll increase basic pay by around 11%. We think that's a very fair deal for doctors.
Fair is not how doctors see it, and in fact, when junior doctors and consultants last went on strike over a new contract, it was 1975. But then they still provided emergency cover. Not so this time. So what days are affected? The first strike is less than a fortnight away on December the 1st, with 24 hours of emergency care only, no appointments or planned operations. But on the 8th and 16th of December, there won't even be emergency cover. Full walkouts from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Junior doctors have been given no choice by the government other than to say all we can do to resist the imposition of a contract that we feel is both unsafe for patients and unfair for doctors is to take this action.
And this action to withdraw cover is almost certainly coming. Chris Shipp, ITV News, Westminster.
Well, patients are being warned that disruption is clearly inevitable if the strikes go ahead. Our health editor, Rachel Younger, spent the day in Chorley General Hospital in Lancashire to see how it's preparing and patients and staff are reacting.
Naomi Davidson, please. Carol Holden. Lorraine Baxter, please.
Dr. Laura Murphy doesn't know what it means to stop. She helps run 2 different clinics, sees 69 patients and swaps scrubs for a suit in just 1 shift.
My name's Lauren. I'm one of the junior doctors in clinic.
After 5 years in the job, that title doesn't quite seem to cover it.
We're the people you'll see when you come in very unwell with a heart attack. We're the people who deliver your babies. We don't get breaks, we don't get lunch times, and that's just because we're so busy, because we're there providing care for our patients.
When Lauren goes on strike, consultant Hani Shuhaiba will be one of those doing his best to plug the gap. It won't be easy.
Without the junior doctors, this department would collapse, the NHS would collapse, There's no question about it. They are the backbone of the NHS.
You can see why. Every day, Chorley Hospital and its sister in Preston see over 4,000 patients. Of the 850 doctors who care for them, almost half are classed as juniors. The Trust doesn't yet know how many will go on strike. They do know it won't be business as usual. This hospital, like every other, has spent weeks preparing for the impact of the strikes. Here, the decision has already been taken to cancel a number of routine operations and clinics to make sure there'll be enough doctors to cover emergencies. When far fewer clinicians walked out 3 years ago, the British Medical Association estimated a quarter of non-urgent patients were affected.
So do you know what you're having? You're having boys or girls? Two boys. And what's the big off that home?
Yet almost everyone we spoke to here backed their doctor's right to strike.
Well, they're the future, aren't they? We need the future for the babies that we're having. They do a great job and deserve everything that they ask for, really.
The question is whether that degree of public support will last. Lauren may be reaching the end of her shift, but some of the most difficult weeks ever faced by the NHS are just beginning. Rachel Younger, ITV News, Chorley.
OK, so let's return then to our Deputy Political Editor, Chris Shipp. So, Chris, what happens then next in this dispute?
Well, what happens next, Mary, in fact, is happening immediately, is some pretty urgent contingency planning for the strike days. In fact, I've got a letter here from Sir Bruce Keogh, Professor Sir Bruce Keogh, who's England's medical director, who asked of the British Medical Association, what happens if hospitals get back to us and say, look, when we factor out the junior doctors, we don't have enough staff to do emergency cover. What happens, and he refers to it here, if there's a Paris-style attack? Will junior doctors suddenly become available? All sounds rather worrying, and in order not to get to this point, the British Medical Association is saying there should be talks through a third party like the conciliation service ACAS, but Jeremy Hunt is insistent he'll have talks, but only directly with him, and he doesn't seem to be any mood to compromise. So it looks like England is now heading towards these unprecedented days of strike action in the NHS.
OK, Chris Shipp at St Thomas's Hospital there, thank you. And for advice on how the planned strike in England could affect you, go to our website, itv.com/news.
Now to Paris, and the suspected ringleader of the attacks there is dead, the French authorities confirmed today. Abdelhamid Aboud died in a hail of gunfire during that raid on an apartment in the north of the city yesterday. Today, France also linked him to four foiled attacks in the last few months and said no EU country had told them Aboud had returned from Syria. Emma Murphy reports from Paris.
This is one of Abdelhamid Aboud's recruiting videos, complete with the crack of bullets which would define his life and his death. It's now been confirmed the man who oversaw the murder of 129 people is himself dead. The 28-year-old was killed in the 5,000-round onslaught unleashed by police on this flat. His injuries so severe he had to be identified by skin samples. It's believed he'd been behind 4 of 6 foiled attacks since the spring.
Aucune information.
We did not receive any prior information from any European country where he could have gone through before reaching France that would have suggested he had arrived in Europe and was travelling to France.
Et cheminé jusqu'à la France.
Also killed during the siege in the Parisian suburb of Saint-Denis was Hasna Eitbul Hassan. In this recording, you can hear her speaking with police in the moments before she detonated a suicide vest. Where's your boyfriend? Police shout, referring to Aboud. He's not my boyfriend, she replies, and the firing starts. What their relationship was matters little to those caught in their attacks. This is CCTV from one of the restaurants. Staff chat and customers eat. Then this happens. CCTV cameras do not capture sound, but show the dust and debris and the panic. Bullets are flying into the room. A woman, shot in the wrist, runs in and takes cover. We then see the gunman. He has a Kalashnikov rifle, which he points at a table where 2 women are hiding. His gun fails. He walks away to kill others. The women who'd faced death and survived run away to tell the story of their escape. Colette Renee Portal lives above the restaurant. She saw the shooting through her window. Then police smashed their way into her flat, thinking terrorists were hiding inside. There was a big noise, she told me. It wasn't gunfire. I didn't know what it was. And then in the kitchen I saw the silhouette of two men with guns. They told me to hurry up and leave with them because of terrorists. The past 6 days have revealed much about the lives of those caught in this terror and those who perpetrated it. For now, every piece of information on them leads to yet more questions.
And Emma, this lack of intelligence about Aboud's movements before the attacks must be very concerning for the French authorities.
Extremely concerning because it raises a lot of very serious questions and indeed issues, not least how on earth he managed to get back from Syria into this country without anybody being aware of it. At the beginning of all this, nearly 7 days ago now, we were told that he was thought to be in Syria. Within days, he was found in this country. Tomorrow there will be a meeting held in Brussels involving all countries in Europe, in the Schengen area, to try and work out how they can tighten passport controls, how they can really beef up border security. It will be a very difficult issue because you have to balance personal freedom with the ability to protect a population. But those ministers going tomorrow are going to have to address many of the issues that have been raised this week.
Indeed. Emma, thank you very much.
Here, police have described the arrest of a Libyan man over the death of WPC Yvonne Fletcher as a turning point in the investigation. The suspect was detained this morning in southeast England and is being held on suspicion of conspiracy to murder. WPC Fletcher was shot dead outside the Libyan embassy in London in 1984. Our UK editor, Rohit Kachru, has more.
31 years on, they might now be anywhere. But these are the pro-Gaddafi demonstrators that police are trying to trace. This ITV News footage captures the protest and the shot that followed. The shot that killed Yvonne Fletcher. Her family have authorised the release of these pictures. It's been 31 years since her death. The investigation now older than she was, but today a Libyan man was arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to murder. And investigators now believe there certainly was a conspiracy.
This was not a spontaneous act. This was a conspiracy that was directed and orchestrated from Libya at the time, and it was, if you like, enabled and carried out by those within the Libyan People's Bureau.
It was the collapse of the Gaddafi regime that allowed British detectives to travel to Libya to investigate, though the chaos now makes things difficult. John Murray was a PC who cradled Yvonne as she lay on the floor. He promised her that day he'd do what he could to find those responsible. And today, he says, is a moment of progress.
I was close to tears. I was tears of joy. Certainly with this arrest, it looks like my promise to Yvonne has been fulfilled.
Last year, on the anniversary of her death, Yvonne's parents laid flowers at the spot where she was killed. Her father has died since then, and tonight his family said his one regret was that he never witnessed justice. Rohit Kachru, ITV News.
A 15-year-old boy is critically ill and another is stable in hospital after they were stabbed at a school in South London. It happened at Kingsdale Foundation School in Dulwich this afternoon. A teenager has been arrested in relation to the attacks.
And the body of teenager Kayleigh Haywood was recovered by police today. Detectives made the discovery last night in undergrowth close to where she went missing in Leicestershire on Friday. 2 men are being held over the 15-year-old's murder. Ben Chapman reports.
Tonight, Kayleigh Haywood's family gathered with hundreds of others at their local church. Comforted by friends, joined by strangers, too many to fit inside, they remembered this 15-year-old schoolgirl who's been described as bright and bubbly.
Kayleigh was a lively and fun-loving girl who had just begun her final GCSE year. She had started Year 11 with a determination to be successful, and it is so sad that such an opportunity has been taken away from her.
6 days after her parents last saw her, the search for Kayleigh ended as her body was carried across a field. Police spent the day scouring the area close to where they found her late last night as they continue to question two men in their 20s on suspicion of her murder. Her family believes she may have gone to meet a man she'd contacted online. Those close to the family say they are beyond devastated.
They're numb really with shock. I mean, nobody can believe that this has happened in a tiny place like Ibstock.
Tonight, back in Kayleigh's home village of Measham, candles were lit and condolences were left for a teenager whose death, her family say, has left a gaping hole in their lives. The scale of the turnout at this vigil tonight at this church for Kayleigh was astonishing and really very moving. Hundreds upon hundreds of people, some of them who knew Kayleigh, others who'd never met her, all of them just wanted to be here to support her family. They have released their own statement tonight in which they say, "We are heartbroken, grief-stricken and as a family utterly devastated." They say there are no words to express the way they are feeling.
All right, Ben, thank you very much.
Two damning reports have found former Halifax Bank of Scotland bosses were to blame for the collapse of the bank in 2008. The current city regulator will now look at banning 10 former executives and taking fresh action against others. The reports also criticise the former Financial Services Authority for failing to investigate the bosses.
Now, the government's been criticised after announcing plans for a new plane to take the Prime Minister on official visits around the world.
As Downing Street says, in the long run, it will save money. But as our political correspondent Lewis Vaughan-Jones reports, ministers have been accused of hypocrisy.
When the Prime Minister visits different countries, he flies in different planes. The government have to hire whatever is available on the open market at the time of the trip. But things are about to change. David Cameron thinks it's a better idea to have his own plane. So, an RAF A330 Voyager will be refurbished. The plane is normally used for air-to-air refuelling, but will now be kitted out to accommodate the Prime Minister as well.
It actually saves taxpayers money because up until now he's been very expensively leasing planes each time he's wanted to travel, and this is a cheaper solution over the long run.
The government says Voyager will cost £10 million to refit and it will save £775,000 a year. But it will take 13 years to start paying back the taxpayer and will have a lifespan of 20 years. Tony Blair had a similar, more expensive idea when he was Prime Minister, which the Conservatives criticised.
The truth of the matter is that they were rampantly opposed to it. They made big fuss about it, calling it Blair Force One and all the rest of it. We never actually put it into operation when we were in government. So now it feels like hypocrisy.
The plane will have a secure communications system and 158 seats, a third of them business class. Lewis Vaughan-Jones, ITV News.
Peter Robinson has announced he will step down as Northern Ireland's First Minister and the Democratic Unionist Party leader within a matter of weeks. Mr Robinson said he had wanted to stabilise the power-sharing administration in Stormont before stepping aside.
And passengers and crew on board a cruise ship had to be rescued by British forces after a fire in one of its engine rooms. 79 people were winched from the deck of the ship just north of the Falklands.
Now, ITV News has learnt that Vauxhall is warning Zafira drivers to avoid using their vehicles' heaters this winter in case they burst into flames. Hundreds of the family cars have reportedly caught fire, but the company says it now does know the root cause. Owners will shortly be sent letters, apparently, advising them to use heaters sparingly. This special report from our consumer editor, Chris Choi.
This week, yet more Zafira B fires. This involved a mum with 2 toddlers. Now we've learned that Vauxhall is to send out new safety information to thousands of owners. Daphne Nicholas has already had the latest advice, and that's why the heater is off and blankets need to go on.
Well, I've got blankets in the car to make sure the children are wrapped up. Well, I was surprised that, they've told me not to use the heater, just to put it on for a few minutes.
Last week, Vauxhall announced it would start sending recall letters in batches, starting with those that have the oldest vehicles. But we've learned that a new warning letter will also go out to all 220,000 owners all at once from Monday. Advice is to use heaters sparingly in short bursts on fan setting 4 as a precaution until the cars are properly inspected. Vauxhall is effectively saying to drivers, risk getting cold or risk your car so badly overheating it could potentially burst into flames. It's because the company now says it's found the root cause of these fires to be botched repairs around this area. It says a component on the heater system has sometimes been wrongly fixed outside its dealership network.
They are severe fires. They tend to involve the whole of the front of the vehicle, so it is important that people get out of the car if they think they've got a problem. My advice would be to get your vehicle checked as soon as you possibly can.
But Vauxhall has only checked 20,000 so far, and it seems inevitable there'll be more of these fires before all cars are inspected. Chris Choi, ITV News.
And finally tonight, what about this? A puppy born without front paws is on the move thanks to 3D technology. Tumbles the terrier, yes, Tumbles, has been living up to his name ever since he was born with just 2 legs. But now experts from Ohio University have used 3D printing to make him his own custom-built wheelchair.
Yes, his new set of wheels is helping to build up the muscles in his back legs, and he's also undergoing a full course of physio. Experts say it will take a little while, but his days of tumbling could soon be over. How sweet is that?
Thank goodness for that. That's all for now. Tom will be here at 10.
The team here, have a great evening. Bye-bye.